Hey everyone, I'm working with Wilson Architecture, who's helping me with the passive house energy modeling and permit drawings for my ADU. They just completed the draft energy modeling using PHPP, Passive House Planning Package. And in a recent call, Brock and Noah walked me through some key insights. Here's what we covered. Our current design is close to meeting the Passive House low energy building standard. We need to fine-tune the window placement and size to balance daylighting, heating, and cooling load. We are exploring different wall construction methods for better performance. We are also looking at a few energy recovery ventilators to optimize fresh air circulation. If you are curious about how PHPP energy modeling applies to a small ADU, check out this Zoom call. And if you are in GTA, Ontario, and interested in building a high performance passive house, let's connect and subscribe for more information and update on my passive house journey. Thank you.
The energy modeling of your ADU.
Yeah.
So we've gone through, Noah has developed the SketchUp model for the ADU. He's then utilized Design PH, the plugin with SketchUp to take advantage of the shading components in the surrounding areas. We've come to realize that the pine trees on the easterly side of weren't doing anything with respect to the shading effect. So I think Noah had to remove those because the tree families were bogging the computer down a little bit. So we were able to remove those. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to share our PHPP model, and we can discuss different avenues of it. What we've done is we've looked at different elements of the model and kind of played around with it to make it work per se in any case. So we like to call it massaging the model in any sense. So I'm going to share my screen, and Noah, feel free to jump into whenever you'd like. Noah does have the Design PH model or the SketchUp model open too, so if we need to jump back and forth to those, that would be great. So I don't need to, the nice thing about this, Peter, is I most likely don't need to repeat anything or don't need to, educate you in terms of PHPP because you're understanding of PHPP, so which is great. So as you are aware, you know that the verification page shows exactly what we're hitting in terms of target levels. The reason why we're hitting these, we'll get to that very shortly. One item that I want to pay attention to is, of course, the non-renewable primary energy is hitting 181 kilowatts per meter square per annum, where the criteria is 120. This is throwing us for a little bit of a loop. We want to make some more review and discussions with potentially Peel Passive or some of our colleagues as well. We believe that the reason for this is simply due to the area of the unit or the ADU. Because when we adjust the overall treated floor area, that goes down drastically. So there has to be something to do with the area in itself. So I'd like to see if there's any, specific workaround, or they can, consider some other options for that because we're so small. The thing too is that whenever we look at the space heating demand and cooling demand and all that, the irony behind it is that, okay, on paper, like right now, it looks large, like for example, 23 kilowatts per meter square per annum, but your treated floor area is tiny in any case. So we've actually calculated, I think both heating and cooling, it's like 0.2 of a ton that is needed for heating. You can't get a unit that small. So you're going to have the smallest unit available in terms of a heat pump for heating and cooling. So just running through this quick, the climate, we've inputted the location. PHPP has shown that Toronto is the best location for that. So we've shown that. So we've got the climatic data in there. The U values, I want to talk about this in particular. So we have inputted Quantum's exterior wall assemblies. And correct me if I'm wrong, Noah, we used was it the 18-inch wall?
Yeah, we used the 18.
The 18-inch. We do know that they have thicker walls, and we haven't received their appropriate package yet. Chelsea has been back and forth with us in terms of discussions. So, and she's also looking at she's getting the costing together too as well. But we've made a good assumption of what their wall composition is, and we can do that by utilizing the U values in terms of thicknesses and materials. So with that, we have shown, for example, the slab, we've just shown a Legolet slab for the time being with 12 inches of EPS insulation on the base. The exterior walls, these are showing, they're showing 16 inches, but I believe they're the 18 inches.
Yeah.
We're showing the EcoBat insulation, OSB sheathing, so that's kind of their exterior wall composition, so double stud wall, and it's giving us our U value below. We do have a location where it's in touch with the ground, so that's another option that's based out of design pH, and then in terms of areas, and then we have the roof, of course, too as well. So they have an 18-inch roof. We could go larger per se, depending on how detailed we want or how much U value we want out of that. And the reason why I say that is that we've actually gone through the model in itself, and I'll show you briefly what the results were. But with Quantum's panel system, we are actually quite high in terms of the overall heating demand. It was high. It was higher than the 30 that we wanted. So the reason why we have it at the 23 right now is we've looked at different options in terms of different materials. So we've, in previous projects construction, we've utilized ICF construction at exterior ICF wall, the Nudura XR35 with the Omega panels on the outside. So we ended up plugging that model or that wall assembly in here as an alternative wall assembly, just to see how things work. And that one does prove itself to be better in terms of a U value than the Quantum. So we've utilized that as kind of another option. So that's why we're getting a lower. So we've actually, in terms of the areas, we've actually inputted those walls, the XR35 walls. What I want to show you here is if we use, I'll just use the Quantum.
Yeah.
I'll just change this live so we can see things how they change. And we'll just ambient. Okay. Now go back to verification. I think no, I have to save. So you can see how it jumped up the one.
Yeah.
So now, of course, that's above the Passive House requirement for low energy building, which we're certifying here, or we're getting as part of the certification. We can play with this too as well. As you know, there's massaging back and forth. I'll probably say massaging a couple times. That being said, because we do have an air change rate of 0.3 air changes per hour, which I think is quite achievable. One of our clients achieved a 0.3 ACH in their 1,800 square foot home, and they did all the work themselves. So with this care and attention, we can. I feel like we could get lower than 0.3. I mean, sometimes we just like to play around, and if I say, okay, well, it's a 0.15, well, that could drop it to 30.4 kilowatts per meter squared per minute. We understand that once we get lower to roughly under 0.3 and less, the impact is not very significant. It's only significant between 1.6 and 0.3. So we like to be ambitious, of course, but we like to be conservative too as well. So with that, a 0.3 would be good, I would say. We only need to hit 0.1, of course, for the low energy certification, but you can see if we hit 0.1, how that would affect, our heating demand and heating load too as well, right? So we're still hitting the air tightness, pressurization test, but we're not hitting the heating demand. So we have to figure out ways to really optimize that. So so if we use 0.3, that should be fine. And one other item that we also looked at in terms of the roof is how can we increase it? Because we like to an easy, simple way to understand your heat loss, your losses, or the demand that is required, is to use this energy balancing chart, right?
Yeah.
And we can then look at it and say, okay, well, wow, like our ambient external walls are pretty significant. So that's where we want to focus on. In addition, you can see here, this is the roof as well as the windows, right? The slab isn't too crazy, so we can keep that as is, and then ventilation is ventilation. So the walls are very important. So again, if I jump back to the areas and I change these walls to our preferred or our previous ICF walls as we did before. I'm just going to do those quick. ICF, and then I'll go back to the heating, save. You can see it's dropped now from 35. So that's where it's kind of significantly making those adjustments. So in any case, for the wall, or for the roof, sorry, we've increased, I believe, Noah, if I'm not mistaken, to that's 2 feet in terms of thickness of the roof itself. Again, they have an 18-inch size, but we can make those decisions as needed beforehand, so that we optimize it and make sure that we meet those targets. So we've played around with that. We understood those options, and perhaps maybe Quantum has different options that can help us. And once we confirm with their specifications, we can verify if those are in fact true, if it's at a U value of 0.133, or if it's less. We'll confirm those as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to rule out Quantum yet,
Yeah.
because we don't have their exact values. We modeled our assemblies based on their details, but their values could actually be a little bit different in terms of their wall assembly. And again, they do have that thicker wall assembly as well, so we can also toggle that option, and then you could compare costs, obviously, for ICF versus Quantum. So yeah.
Exactly. In terms of glazing, we've utilized EnerScience glazing, G value, U values specific, and then all of their appropriate data and information for their frame components. We've also inputted the thermal bridge values from the certification, EnerScience certification, based on the specific wall assembly. So whenever you look in their certification, they have 3 types of assemblies. They have the ICF, a double stud wall, and an EPS wall. Such as long as that wall system has or meets the U value criteria, I believe it's 0.1, then we can utilize those thermal bridge calculations or numbers and input them into our PHPP. So that's what we've done with respect to the ICF, because we're hitting that 0.1 U value. In fact, this may be adjusted even further depending on Quantum's therm models. I mean, we can do therm modeling ourselves, but these can be further refined, and then that would optimize your heating demand, because you're not getting that thermal bridge. You might get negative thermal bridges, for example. Speaking on that, we've actually inputted negative thermal bridges based on our previous modeling of the ICF construction methodology. We've inputted thermal bridges for the exterior corners.
Yeah.
At your high level, so your high roof, exterior corners at the low roof, and we've inputted a roof negative thermal bridge and the slab edge negative thermal bridge. And these are all just right now. I'm not. there's somewhat assumptions in any case. The slab edge we've already detailed and firmed it, so that's concrete. We can understand that. The roof in itself, that overhang may be adjusted based on the composition, but by inputting those negative thermal bridges, it also then reduces our heating demand rather than being conservative and using no thermal bridge, negative thermal bridge, right? So we want to take advantage of that. That being said, again, with the windows, we could also take advantage of that. With our previous meeting with Peel Passive on another project, they've actually notified us. We always thought that whenever you include a negative thermal bridge, you have to model every single thermal bridge. They've mentioned to us that that's not the case, such as long as if you're modeling, for example, the exterior corners, well, then you have to include all the exterior corners, for example. So it doesn't necessarily mean we have to model the entire project, but I mean, since your project is so small, it's not really difficult for us to do that. So we've inputted those as part of our calculations too as well. The last thing that, or not the last thing, but the other important thing that we want to discuss is your windows. Yeah. So what we've done here in this case is we've actually went through and looked in terms of optimizing windows and which windows should we have, what sizes could we have, etc. I know you've provided us with sizes, but we wanted to understand with the heating loads, especially for heating and cooling, how that worked together. So you can see where we've actually we have the model, we have the window sizes and all that inputted into PHPP based off of the design PH model. But we also, what we've done in this case is we've turned some off and on by just removing the quantities in any case. So it's kind of an off and on switch. So if I turn these back on, the ones that we've turned off, and we can go through the ones exactly, you can see that in doing so, our heating demand, I'll just go back. I want to see, bear with me for a second. Let's go. Okay, go back to the windows. So right now our heating demand is at, save it, 24.
Yeah.
And if I jump back and add these windows in, hit save, it jumps up to 26. So there is some impact, but the other impact that we were cautious about is your cooling load.
Right.
Because that overhang, even though the overhang does provide some shading, we want to ensure that the cooling. So I'm just going to jump back to see. So there's our cooling load is at 60 right now, and then adding those windows back in, we are at 73 or 74 kilowatts. So it adds 14 kilowatts of cooling load. In that case, I don't believe our cooling demand is now met, for example.
I see.
So we've played around with that. I mean, we could further investigate too as well, because I mean, I'd hate to be honest, I'd hate to remove windows because that's kind of natural light and free heat. So my thought process behind that is, okay, well, if we have to remove windows, which windows we remove? My suggestion would be most likely the north windows, if anything, because you're not getting any gain from the north windows, and north is essentially towards your street. I would love to keep the south windows, but perhaps maybe we optimize them in terms of what type of coatings they have in terms of the solar heat gain coefficient. So we play around with those particulars so that we can essentially try to keep them or optimize them in terms of the size. Do bear in mind though, this data here that we have in terms of the cooling and heating is based on the ICF wall too as well. Yeah. So we're going back and forth trying to really optimize, and I don't think it'll be difficult to get there. I think it's just putting the pieces in the right spot and then getting those costs together too as well. So we've looked at that. So those are our undersigned windows, tilt and turns fixed, and our doors. We have them in their specific locations, the sizes too as well, based on the drawings and what we've provided, and what you've provided in terms of the SketchUp model. We don't see any issues with respect to comfort criteria, which is great in any case, so that's fantastic. Continuing through, we have inputted the shading coefficients or factors in terms of PHPP or design pH model, so we're able to utilize that in any case. And then in terms of the ventilation, we've shown a Zender unit for the time being, a Compo Air 200, which gives us an airflow range between 60 and 150 CFM. I know we're probably going to be on the low side of that airflow. We looked at going a unit less. I believe it was the 160 ERV, which is actually it's 73 to 115 in terms of airflow, but the efficiency isn't as good as the 200. So our thoughts are, is, you know, for the 200, I don't believe there's much cost difference between the two units. We've seen in multiple occasions where some of our clients had to go from the 200 to the 350Q or the 450Q. There wasn't significant cost increase for the larger model.
So what about between HRV and ERV? In our case, isn't ERV better to...
ERV is better, yeah. We would suggest an ERV.
Yeah.
So we could use the Compo Air 200 ERV that comes with a preheater, and then we would also recommend having a post heater too as well. In that case, in this sense, we've shown it in terms of a location, and we've seen that this does actually impact the heating demand too as well. Ironically, is depending on where I just want to confirm in terms of your preferred location, Peter. Did you have a preference in terms of where the ERV would be located?
For example, what kind of choices do I have?
Well, good question. I mean, you don't have very much real estate. Our thoughts at first were, okay, that little closet at the entryway, but that's going to take up a lot of room for clothes and whatnot. Closet. I would probably suggest maybe your bedroom closet, locating or having a little bit of a closet for the ERV for that location. I know that the clothes closet could be the entire length, but that's quite large in any case. So the reason being that is that we can then have the exhaust and intake lines directly to the outside wall, because we have noticed that, for example, if I show you this right now, where heating demand is 24.7. If I increase the length of our ductwork to 2 meters, let's call it, that's our intake and exhaust. You can see that it adjusts probably roughly about 2 kilowatts, right? Just for that. So
I love your idea. I love that. Yeah. As long as I can reduce the cost and the work,
that's it.
Better.
Exactly. So typically, as you're aware, those that ERV then provides supply and return to smaller ductwork. So the Compo tubes, which are about 3 inches, they'll go to a terminal and they'll split off that way. So very, very simple to install and whatnot. So that's all good. So that in itself, I mean, we've gone through your cooling in terms of having a ductless split heat pump for both cooling and additional heat, knowing that, you know, we could probably heat this with the ERV and the heating, the post heater, but we put that in for cooling and dehumidification too as well during the summer months. So we have a ductless cooling unit. In any case, we can also probably optimize this as well. This is just the standard inverted split unit. So we may be able to get some better data on this in terms of the appropriate unit to try to get that load down. So we do that, of course, would provide us our cooling load. Domestic hot water distribution, quite simple, pretty low in terms of a distance, in terms of the lengths. We just put 5 meters for a placeholder right now with the small 40-gallon hot water tank. Was there any preference? Were you looking at having a tank itself, Peter, in terms of the hot water?
Yeah, when I was researching it, there was a heat pump hot water tank, a small size tank, and I can put the unit outside and inside there's a small tank. So there was a brand I mentioned, I think. Maybe not.
Was it Ream or?
No, it's not. In the document that I provide all the details, I think I mentioned
you most likely did.
brand.
Jump back.
It's been a while since
Bear with me for 2 seconds.
I don't memorize. But yeah, the heat pump is small size and something that occupy little space inside.
Yeah, perfect. So we'll motor anchors, electrical hot water tank, the Senko 2 heat pump.
Yes. That's the one.
Okay.
Senko.
Perfect. Okay, so we'll input that into our model. I think bear with me for a second. I just want to see what we've utilized in terms of our ER. Okay, so we do have the drain water heat as heat pump. So that's good. So both our heating and domestic hot water, is heat pump sourced, which is great, which of course is going to reduce our overall power consumption too, in any case. So we'll input that appropriate efficiency here in here as well, and then see how that affects the model in any case. That's good. Okay. Perfect. Split units and then hot water tank is heat pump. Okay, perfect. So what we can also do, Peter, is we can share this PHPP. We'll make the adjustments. We'll share the PHPP model with you so you can also play around with it. And then what we can do from there is I'd like to just keep this as is for now until we confirm with Quantum the exact specifications. Once we know those, I think we can then start making some, let's call them drastic decisions in any case. Drastic being whether we're going with Quantum or not. The other either reducing some window sizes, for example, or not, and then going from there. So we really have to weigh, let's call it the pros and the cons based on your program, based on what you're looking for or what you're looking to achieve in the end. So that's where we're at. I mean, so far as I'm concerned, it's pretty good. I think we can optimize a little bit more, but as a conservative starting approach, I think we're in good shape.
Okay, sounds good. I have a few questions.
Sure.
Like I mentioned at the beginning, I'm not that keen to getting the certificate. So
yes,
even I get no for some criteria. That's fine with me. But for you as a designer, do you wanna get certificate for this project if possible?
If it's possible, yes, we would love that. Anything that we can. I mean, obviously, as a designer, we design it to meet certified, criteria because we want to ensure that you're getting that appropriate product. We know that you're not, if it's not the end of the world if you don't. So we play around with things. I would say our goal is to at least achieve it if we can. If we can't, based on different aspects of the project and reasonings for it, well, where can we reduce and go from there, right? So if we don't have to impact the performance by reducing it, then that's great. If we need to, then we have to choose which direction we need to go.
I see. So even though we don't go to certificate route, if we,
Yeah.
we can meet all the criteria, for example, for low energy building, then
Yes.
you can say for the later, we did this project and then we met all the criteria for low energy building, right?
That's
You can
right.
say,
Exactly. Yeah.
okay,
Exactly. Yeah. No, that's exactly it. One thing that I just wanted to show you actually while I have it. So this 183 as the primary energy demand. If I just jump over to our treated floor area, which is roughly 40 square meters. If I change that, I'll just take 80 square meters for now. Let's see how that impacts. You can see that it really impacts the and then you're fully certified. So again, we believe that's the reasoning behind it. We still want to see if there's any alternative that we can achieve it. Obviously doesn't cost any more versus that. So yeah.
Yeah, and my second question is for the number of windows, is
Yep.
it the same as the number of windows I mentioned from
So-
my initial document?
So the windows that we've inputted here, so if I turn all these back on, the ones that we're removing, let's call it from model, this is all the openings that you've provided us in your document. Yeah, exactly all the openings.
Yeah, it's split up between the fixed windows and the operable. So like say you have one window on your drawing, it's actually split into two on the PHPP. Because the fixed versus operable have slightly different values.
Different frame values. Yeah. So we have to physically, even though the one unit, let's call it, has, like Noah mentioned, both a fixed unit and an operable unit, we have to model them separately. Yeah. So that so with that, I mean, with that, turning them all on right now, we're still hitting the heating demand, which is good, but we're just not hitting the cooling demand. So that could be adjusted, like you had said. There's some potential for operational shades, and or whether or not the different coatings are being used. So that's something that we can further investigate to see if we can get that cooling load down and keep your windows. And that's what we want to do.
Just for personal preference, I would like to be warm and cozy inside during the winter.
Yes.
Yeah, of course. I can plan a tea or something. So
that's right. Yeah.
That way.
For sure. And I mean, even if you're in there in the sun, in the summer, and it's getting too hot, for example, I mean, having those roller shades or that opportunity to bring something down to cool it, it could be that alternative, right? So we're not far off. That's the thing. So we're not far off. So I don't think it's going to be that difficult to achieve. So that's something that we just need to look into a little bit further. So